The question we have is to build new or not to build. That is the question. Whether to renovate or whether to build new. And I think that's a question that many people ask when they live in a home that's been around for a number of years. This particular home it sits on a beautiful block, and I'll show it to you, especially when we go upstairs. But the home is definitely substandard. I'll run you through some of the reasons why we have decided not to renovate this house. We've decided to knock it down and rebuild. Now, just so you know, these are all my opinions. Whenever you are embarking on a renovation or a build, I urge you to, number one, check with council. And number two, town planners are your friend. Get a town planner on board early and start talking to them about what you wish to do. They can help you and save you a whole lot of red tape and probably time as well. And finally, I'm a big believer in finding a builder, whether you're renovating or building new, finding a builder you can work with early, forming a relationship with that builder and creating some trust. Some folks, when they renovate and they build, they scattershot approach it and they send it out to 10 different builders and say, what's your price, what's your price, what's your price? I will tell you 100%, and I'm earnest at this, it's more important to find a builder you can trust and work with than it is for the bottom dollar. And the reason for that is, in any build or renovation, there are line items that you can choose to include or choose to exclude. There are a myriad of ways to reduce your costs, but you need to do them in concert with your team, that is, in concert with your builder. So if your builder's on side and you've got some trust there, you can say, hey, Mr. Builder, this is what we're thinking. Can you suggest the most cost-effective way in doing this, or can you suggest some alternatives? And I've got to tell you folks, that is gold, to have someone you can trust to come up with alternatives, rather than saying, here's the spec sheet, here's what we're going to build, just price it. We've chosen to do that. We're using a builder named Matt Glossip and Liam. They own a company called Avalon Projects. They do beautiful work. I met Matt at Surf Life Savings, so there was trust there in the beginning, and there was no other person I would use. Absolutely no other person. I didn't even choose to tender it out because Matt was my guy. Matt and I have worked tirelessly over the last 12 months to produce a design that works with the budget and is something that we're excited about, and we've looked for ways to cut costs that no other builder, if I'd done it the other way, would have helped us with. That's my advice, is to find a builder you can work with and trust. It is key. It is your key to a successful renovation or a successful build. One of the reasons that we decided not to renovate this house is purely because the height. Noosa Council will allow you to build up to 8 meters on a residential block. This house right now stands at 6.3 meters in total. If we renovated this house, especially with the main floor, it would have been very difficult to maximize our height. We looked at raising the whole building, but because this house is a brick facade, it would have been, and the way it was constructed, it would have been impossible to raise this house, or very expensive for not a great deal of gain. That was one of the big items, because with a new build, of course, we can maximize our height and get up to that 8 meters. Why is that important? Well, on this block, it's important because of that. If you look here, there's a house in front, and my goal is to be as higher than that. My goal is to be as high as I can to look over that house and hopefully get a whitewater view when all the dust settles. That was one big consideration. The next consideration was, when we looked at renovating this house, it's poorly laid out. If this house was probably built in, probably early 80s, I don't know exactly, but probably early 80s. The layout was back in that style of thought. There wasn't as much emphasis placed on the views and the light. And back then, honestly, building materials weren't as good as they are today. And so the sea breeze and the wind was a big factor back then, more so than it is today. They built this to try to protect from the sea breeze and the wind, but mostly it's about layout. As a real estate agent, I have a good sense of what is attractive to the buying market and what is unattractive to the buying market. There are many things in this house that are unattractive to the buying market, and of course that's my orientation. That's what I'm thinking of, is how to maximize the attractiveness for the new build to attract, obviously, buyers. Some of the other issues around this house are every square centimeter of this home needs attention. Nothing is level, nothing is plumb, nothing is true, and nothing was built with an intent to last. If this was a well-constructed brick home with something to save, then of course we'd be thinking, how can we renovate? How can we best improve the existing structure? But it so happens that this is not a well-built brick home. It just is, basically we call this a money pit. You'd be putting more money in for lesser gains. One thing I want to speak to is, if this house is so in need of knocking down, you're asking, why would we have bought it in the first place? And I would like to tell you that it was through a sophisticated process of assessment that we were working hard to find exactly the right property, that it was a strategic investment. And I can tell you quite honestly, my wife said, Pat, I love this block. Don't screw this up, make sure you buy it. So I was under a lot of intention to make sure we bought this house. But quite honestly, knowing that the house was substandard, we knew we would have to renovate or build, but we knew that the block was in a good street. Netherby Rise is an excellent street, and it was a preferred block on the beach side of Netherby Rise. One of the great things that I knew about Netherby Rise from being an agent is that the houses on the beach side of Netherby Rise do not have traffic noise. And the reason is, on Orient Drive, the traffic noise from David Low Way bounces off all the houses on Orient Drive, and for some weird, quirky reason, all you are left with here on Netherby is the sound of the ocean. And that's why these properties are so attractive and so valuable in the long run. Come on upstairs and I'll show you the reason that my wife loved this block so much. When we first walked up these stairs on this deck, my wife and I thought, wow, this is an amazing spot and this place we'd like to bring up our kids. And that was the reason that we bought this place, this deck. And actually, the original deck was so decrepit that joists were all rotten. And actually, that was the first thing we did, was rebuild the deck, even though we knew that we would probably end up tearing it down, because we love it up here so much. And being Canadian, we're not afraid of the sun. We love the sun. And this was definitely a place for sun. The nice thing about this block is, up at this high, you can see east, you can see south to Point Arkwright, and you can see west to the hinterland. Now that's Mount Croy over there, and the hinterland sunsets from this block actually are excellent. So we've got the sunrise in the morning on the east, and we've got the sunset at night to the west. And for us, that was reason to buy.